السلام عليكم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. يا ربنا زدنا علما وتقوى وبارك في أوقاتنا وفي أقوالنا وفي أعمالنا ولا تأخذنا بذنوبنا. بارك فينا بارك فينا ونصلي ونسلم على النبي الكريم وهو إمامنا وقدوتنا وحبيبنا، فنصلي ونسلم عليه وعلى آل بيته وعلى أصحابه. أما بعد, we begin a series at the Shokani Institute at Esperanza Community Hub. And this is a series that actually I wanted to initiate some time ago. But when I attempted to initiate this series, there was some resistance on the part of some of the students to discipline themselves to allow the teacher to teach. So a couple years went by and the benefit was never attained to. The series in studying the history of the Madhabs, studying the principle of the Madhahib or the Madhabs, and becoming familiar with the Imams of the early generation, for in particular Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, and Imam Ahmed rahmatullahi alayhim jami'. And so we initiate this series firstly with the Maliki school. And I'm utilizing the work of the Azhari Sheikh Muhammad Abu Zahra. It was translated into English by Aisha Bewley. And this work represents a key movement in the writings of the ulama, especially of the scholars of Al-Azhar al-Sharif, with regard to fiqh. What we find is that this work introduces the idea of the madhab from a bird's eye view, so that you get an understanding of the political context of the imam. You get an understanding of some points in Aqidah which may have been taking place as far as discussion and debate are concerned. One moment at a time, we have to share. Trying to share the video feed. And so we find that we also get a discussion about the main books and the students of the Imam. So let us begin, inshallah. Every point that is mentioned in the book I won't mention for the sake of brevity, but I will mention what I feel is important to know. The author initiates the section on the study of the Maliki school by first noting something about the Imam of the Madhab, who was Malik bin Anas rahmatullahi alayh. He said that scholars disagree regarding his birth year. And that's a point of verification, to verify the name and the birth date and death date of a scholar. So he mentions that they differ. There's a number of different accounts, and he said that the most widely accepted is 93 Hijri. He was born and lived the major portion of his life, or we should say all of his life, in Medina. And he was born in the shade of the effects of the companions and the tabi'een, and in the city of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which the Prophet Muhammad is buried. He loved Medina, and he was committed to Medina. He considered it to be the fountain of ilm, or the cradle of knowledge and the fountain of light. And he maintained a deep respect for Medina until his death. And it impacted his thinking, his fiqh, and his life in general. He never rode in Medina, and he gave great importance to the practice of the people of Medina in his madhab. Indeed, the principle, the practice of the people of Medina was one of the foundational principles in his methodology. And this will be brought up. Sheikh Abu Zahra, rahmatullahi alayh, he says that Imam Malik was a descendant of a Yemeni tribe, Dhul Asbah, and his full name was Malik bin Anas bin Malik bin Abi Amir al-Asbahi al-Yamani. And his mother's name was Al-Aliyah bin Sharik al-Asdiyah. And his father and mother were both from the Yemeni community. And there was some point of debate with regard to this. And so Sheikh Abu Zahra takes this issue up. He says that the first is that there is one transmission which states that his mother was a client and that her name was Tulayha, and that she was the client of Abdullah bin Ma'mar. That is not the accepted position, since she was in fact from the Yemeni Azdite community, and so that report is unsubstantiated. And we started off by saying that there's a verification process that's needed. And so this process of verification, we find that it takes place even when it comes to accurately communicating information about figures that are well known. The second point is that some biographers claim that Imam Malik and his whole family were clients and therefore not pure members of an Arab tribe. They state that his great-grandfather, Abu Amir, was a client of Banu Taym, the sub-tribe to which Abu Bakr belonged. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, radiallahu anhu. According to this, he would be Qurayshi by clientage. We find that Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah, mentions that Abu Suhail was a client, and Ibn Hajar states, Hafiz ibn Hajar from the ulama of Azhar, states that this Abu Suhail was the uncle of Malik. It says that Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, who was the sheikh of the Imam Malik, considered Malik to be one of the clients of Banu Taym, since his uncle was so considered. Malik denied that and made it clear that his lineage was a pure Arab lineage. And the Muslims, they get caught up in that type of stuff. Part of it is for the preservation of lineage. Part of it becomes ethnocentricity. But the regard of it is a historical point. In any event, lineage doesn't save one on the day of Yom al Qiyamah. And so he mentioned some other things that come up with regard to that. I don't want to go too deep into that, but I want to focus now on Malik's educational background. Imam Malik grew up in a household which was engaged in hadith. His family was interested in the knowledge of the ahadith and the statements of the companions in their fiqh or their fatawa. And this is one of the points that is noted in many scholars in the past, that the whole concept of the household was one which was rooted in ilm. We even know the story of Imam Ibn Taymiyyah. He comes from a time period which is called Asr al-Buyut, the period of the households. So that you see that Imam Ibn Taymiyyah's father was a person of ilm, his grandfather, and so the whole environment is one of ilm. And you see this in some families still today in the Muslim community overall. You find some families that they have taken ilm or the path of knowledge serious, so that the mother is involved in knowledge, the father, the children, the uncles, like that. And that exists till today. That creates a different type of family bonding in reality. يا ليتني أرى هذا في الأمريكان. You know, it's my wish to see that to be a reality among the people of the Americas. To see that reality manifest itself in that way, but that takes a certain commitment on the part of the sister as well as the brother. And if there's a gap in that between the two, the husband and the wife, it becomes difficult. It is clear, however, that Anas bin Malik, Malik's father, was not greatly concerned with hadith, since it is not known that Malik related anything from him, although Malik's grandfather and uncles were. His family was well known for their devotion to knowledge. Imam Malik rahimahullah was originally known as the brother of an Nadir, a brother of his who was esteemed for his knowledge. Then his own desire to seek knowledge grew to such an extent that the people began to say, and Nadir, he is the brother of Malik. Imam Malik then gained standing. In the time of the Umayyads, Medina remained a central point for ulama as far as a referential point, even for the companions themselves who were living in other places. It is related that Abdullah bin Mas'ud would be asked about something in Iraq and give a fatwa about it. If he came to Medina and found that the ruling on the matter was different there, he would return to Iraq and not dismount until he had gone to the one to whom he had given the fatwa and informed him of the difference between the people of Medina and the people of Iraq on this point, following the position of the people of Medina. So we see that Medina has some grounding. The general ambience of the place of Medina where Imam Malik lived was one of knowledge and learning. It was the city of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the place to which he made hijrah or immigrated. It was the land of the Sharia, and it was a fount of the knowledge of the Deen, and it was a stronghold of the Islamic governance, and it was the capital of the Muslim community during the time of Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman. The period of Umar was crucial for the implementation of the guidance of the Quran and the Messenger and the many legal judgments which entailed. So Imam Malik, rahmatullahi alayhi, he grew up in that type of environment. Imam Malik's teaching. Malik first taught in a Masjid al-Nabawi, and then in his house. And as we have already heard, the reason for that move was the illness, which he did not make public. When Imam Malik began to teach, he He had seriousness and tranquility and was far from frivolity. Some of the ulama today, they say that students have lost that seriousness. That's something that needs to be inculcated. He did not think that frivolity should accompany the seeker of knowledge. It is related that he advised one of his nephews, saying, "It is a duty for anyone who seeks knowledge to have gravity, tranquility, and fear. He should follow in the footsteps of those who have gone before. The people of knowledge should dispense with joking, particularly if they have some standing in ilm." He took strong account of himself so that he remained giving lessons and relating hadith for more than 50 years. Not a single laugh is recounted from him in all of this time. Such were his seriousness and fear throughout all of those years. It doesn't mean that the students today imitate that 100%, because if we take on that approach 100%, then we push the people away. There was a certain type of people in his time that were able to handle that, right? And they were able to take serious the whole practice of reflecting on the hereafter and the limitations of the dunya, and come into account. And so it was a different type of people. Today's time, the people are in a different position, right? And so sometimes to cheer up the people, you have to build a rapport with them, right? You have so halal jokes is there's nothing wrong with it, but Malik was a serious figure in that regard. When he taught in the masjid, whoever wished could listen to him, and no one would be expelled, even if he did not observe the proper behavior in listening. When he was in his house, he first selected his companions for study, and then after that, he gave permission for the common people to come, and he would relate to them the hadith and the fiqh of the early generations. He related to each according to their ability. And so Imam Malik was open in that regard. There's some other points to be mentioned on a political level, but we want to move forward in that regard. In Medina, we should mention that there were 7 fuqaha, or people of ilm, in understanding and comprehension. And they were largely responsible for the transmission of the knowledge that was widespread in Medina. And they were considered to be the sources of the knowledge of Malik. And we are indebted to them for much of the knowledge of Islam and the knowledge of the Sunnah which we possess today. Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi mentioned them as being the fuqaha, those with comprehension and understanding, and the bearers of knowledge. The first being the Imam of the Tabi'een, hands down, Sayyid bin Musayyab. The first of them in position, importance, and knowledge was Sayyid radiallahu anhu. He was from Makhzum, a sub-tribe of Quraysh. He was born during the time of Umar bin al-Khattab and died in 93 after Hijri. So he lived through the whole rule of Uthman, Ali, Muawiyah, Yazid, Marwan, and Abdul Malik. This man completely devoted himself to the knowledge of fiqh. He was not concerned with tafsir of the Quran, as was Ikrimah, who was the client and student of Ibn Abbas, and he who transmitted the knowledge of his fiqh and tafsir according to the tafsir of Imam al-Tabari. Yazid bin Abi Yazid said, we used to ask Sa'id ibn Musayyab about the knowledge of the halal and haram, as he was the most knowledgeable of the people. We asked him about the tafsir of an ayah of the Quran. He said, do not ask me about an ayah of the Quran. Ask the one who claims that none of it is hidden from him, meaning Ikrimah radiallahu anhum ajma'in. Sa'id met a great number of the companions and took knowledge from them and studied with them. And we mentioned before in other sessions that Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi has a principle that he mentions with regard to the knowledge of the Sunnah, that the knowledge of the Sunnah is not comprehended by one companion alone, but we gain an insight or an understanding of the knowledge of the Sunnah by taking the knowledge of the companions as a whole. It says here, Sayyid radiallahu anhu met a great number of the companions and took from them and studied with them. What he especially sought were the judgments of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the judgments of Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman radiallahu anhum ajma'in. And so we see that Sayyid radiallahu anhu, he met a good portion of the companions, a great number of them. And so that comes close to bringing back the point that Imam Ibn Taymiyyah had noted with regard to what? With regard to the knowledge of the Sunnah being with the companions overall. He took half of his knowledge from Zayd bin Thabit, and most of his transmissions were from Abu Hurairah, his father-in-law, since Said was married to his daughter. He learned the fiqh of Umar from his companions to such an extent that he was considered the main transmitter of the fiqh of Umar. So Said was married into the family of Abu Hurairah, and he focused heavily on the fiqh of Umar. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahmatullahi alayhi called him the transmitter of Umar and the bearer of his knowledge. Jafar bin Rabi', he said, I asked Iraq bin Malik, who among Malik's sources has the most fiqh? He replied, the one among them with the most fiqh and knowledge of the judgments of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the judgments of Umar, Uthman, and the one with the knowledge of what people did is Sa'id bin Musayyib radiallahu anhu majma'in. The one with the most hadith is Urwa bin Az-Zubair radiallahu anhu. You could not wish for a greater ocean than Ubaydullah ibn Abdullah ibn Utbah. He continued, I think that the one among them with the most fiqh is Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, because he joined their knowledge to his knowledge. Imam al-Zuhri rahmatullah, he said that he used to seek knowledge from three men: Sa'id bin Musayyib, who had the most fiqh of all; Urwa bin Az-Zubair, who was a bottomless ocean in ilm. And if you wish to find a kind of knowledge not found with anyone else, you will find it with Ubaydullah. And that's related by Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, rahmatullahi alayhi. Imam Ibn Musayyib, or Sayyid bin Musayyib, concentrated on fiqh. His concern with hadith was to learn the judgments of the Prophet, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So he focused then on the rulings of the Prophet, what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had ruled on with regard to the knowledge of the halal and haram in the capacity of a judge. And that's a focused knowledge versus just hadith in the general sense. And so here, he also learned the judgments of the Khulafa Rashidun, since he was concerned to know their fatwa and so on and so forth. The most prominent in his transmission of fiqh again is that of Umar bin Khattab. Since Sayyid bin Musayyib followed the traditions of Umar in judgment and in fiqh and in reasoning, his reasoning or right had great importance in his view, because Umar radiallahu anhu frequently formed an opinion on matters about which there was no explicit text in the Book of Allah or the Sunnah of the Messenger. But here this is the issue of ijtihad. So Sayyid bin Musayyib also used ijtihad to answer problems presented to him about matters on which there was no explicit text from the book or the Sunnah or the judgment of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the fatwa of the companion, etc. He will give a fatwa based on his opinion, his ijtihad, which did not exceed what was proper. That is why it is transmitted that he used to give fatwa when others feared to do so. Right? He was the Imam of the Fuqaha of Medina in the time of the Tabi'un. He did not refuse to give a fatwa when there was a need for one. His opinion was based on the firm pillars of fiqh, the Quran and the Hadith and the judgments of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, and that of the Khulafa al-Rashidun. And with that we end, and we have to review the life of Urwa bin Zubair, Abu Bakr ibn Abdurrahman, Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, Ubaydullah bin Abdullah bin Utbah bin Mas'ud, Sulaiman bin Yasar, Kharija bin Zayd bin Thabit, and those all together with Sa'id bin Musayyib constitute the Fuqaha Sab'ah, or the seven Fuqaha of Medina. And these are the sources, the primary sources we can say, or we should say the referential sources behind Malik's fiqh. So we leave with saying that Sa'id bin Musayyib radiallahu anhu was the one that transmitted the knowledge of Umar. He focused on the fatwa of the early generations, but he focused mostly on their judgments, and he was married into the family of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. And so we end with that, and until next time we continue our journey into the life and the fiqh and the methodology of Imam Malik bin Anas before continuing on to study the lives of the other Imams, Fuqaha, Sunnah, as they say, the Imams in the of Fiqh and Sunnah, which came to be known of the Imams of the four Madhabs. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.